headquartered to bring in the coffin in. Thank you. ZMA stand by to receive the coffin and take over the pall bearing. ZMA. We may take our seats, please. Dr. Katambo, are you ready? Dr. Katambo will lead us with the National Anthem as we start our proceedings today. Well, let's be upstanding for the National Anthem. Thank you. Sing along to his tune. Thank you. Thank you very much. We may take our seats. Let me take this opportunity to recognize the dignitaries that have come to grace this occasion. Professor Lacson Kasonka, Permanent Secretary Technical, representing the Ministry of Health. Dr. Crispin Moyo, the President of Zambia Medical Association. Dr. Elliot Kafumukache, Acting DVC, representing the Vice Chancellor of the University of Zambia. Professor Njelesani from Lusaka Apex Medical Universities. All professors here, senior medical doctors, students, family, and friends. I am Professor Sekelani Banda, and I will be the Director of Ceremony for this afternoon's program. What does one say about a person who was your teacher, boss, and mentor? One who gave you a career in academic medicine. How do I memorialize the passing of a person who plucked me out of the crowd and chose me as his assistant dean and set me forth on an academic path without knowing it? Yet he was just doing his job as a mentor. I stand here in public and confess that I was and I am a proud protege of Professor Lupando Munkonge, who we have come to mourn and celebrate his life. He indeed ran a very good race. In my memory, he's the most honorable and impressive boss that I have ever met. I also wish to recognize the presence of our immediate past Minister of Health, Dr. Untitled Chapter, who has been gracious enough to join us. Thank you very much, family, to have come to this professional service. We shall follow the program as it has been circulated, though there will be a few changes to which I will guide as we proceed. I'll now ask the Zambia Medical Association President, Dr. Crispin Moyo, to give his opening remarks. Thank you.
Yes, these are the protocols. Oh, you just had them. Okay, I hear them. Okay, thank you. Greetings to all of you, those that are joining us here in person, and those that are joining us virtually as we are streaming this celebration locally, globally. So, Zambia Medical Association is a professional organization that represents the interests of all doctors in Zambia, as well as advocates on behalf of the patients in order to promote excellency and accountability in the health sector. We have this occasion whenever we lose our member, where we celebrate their life. On this particular occasion, we are celebrating the life of Professor Lupando Munkonge, who, if you ever trained at Ridgeway campus here, on this same campus, you have most likely passed through his hands. I was one of his students, and I remember most of the words that he had for us as he was imparting his knowledge across. So my role is simple here to welcome all of you to this professional service, a service that is dedicated to the life and practice of our departed professor, but also it's a time when we reflect on the life that he led, that to inspire us to follow his path. We did approach government, and thank you very much, Professor Kasonka and your team at the Ministry of Health for facilitating. We were given the honor to accord our departed Professor Munkonge an official funeral. So, and tomorrow, I think Thursday, is a day of national mourning. We appreciate that gesture that has been given to us as a profession. This is how we should be as a profession. We stand for we stand for professionalism. And in our exploits, sometimes it's things that people may not see. I remember I was asked by someone this morning that, who was this Professor Munkonge? I'm just hearing about him for the first time. I said, yes, because you are not in the where it's happening. You are not in the hospitals, you are not in the universities to see what contribution Professor Munkonge made to the health profession. At this point, I would like to hand us back to the Director of Ceremonies to lead us in this professional service. And for those that are participating in this for the first time, please, you just follow the guide as the Director of Ceremonies will be leading us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Moyo. So he has given a bit of background that this service is done for all departed medical doctors to celebrate their career in recognition of their service to humanity and the contribution they have made to the association and the field of medicine in general. Today we celebrate Professor Munkonge as an exemplary career, a life dedicated to medicine, and all his round contribution to the service of humanity. As you are aware, Professor Lupando Munkonge passed away on March 26. He was 85. When he retired, he was the Dean of School of Medicine of the University of Zambia and Professor of Pediatric Surgery, well renowned for the Unza shunt for hydrocephalus surgery and for the successful separation of Siamese twins. It was Professor Munkonge who expanded the School of Medicine to train staff beyond medicine and nursing to include degree pharmacy, biomedical sciences, environmental health, and physiotherapy. These have since become independent schools in the university. Therefore, we need to celebrate him as the true father of all these new schools. It was his visionary leadership that made it possible. I will now be inviting different health professionals who will speak as we proceed on the professional service. First, I now invite Professor Evaristo Njelesani, who will speak as a friend. Professor.
The Director of Ceremonies, Professor Sekelani Banda, the bereaved Munkonge family present in the audience today, this afternoon, the President of the Zambia Medical Association, Dr. Crispin Moyo and his executive, the past Honorable Minister of Health, Dr. Chitaluchilufia, here present, our Permanent Secretary, Technical Services at the Ministry of Health, Professor Lakson Kasonka. The Vice Chancellor of the Levi Mwanawasa Medical University, Professor Elwin Chomba, Professor Elliot Kafumkache, acting as Deputy Vice Chancellor for the School of Medicine, University of Zambia. Distinguished professors here present, deans and directors of schools and faculties, colleagues, medical professionals, medical doctors, our dear medical students here present, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Today is a celebration. So let's not look too gloomy. We are celebrating. We are not mourning here. We are celebrating. this fantastic son of the soil of Zambia. It's a great honor for me to say some words about my senior brother, my senior colleague, and my mentor, Professor Lupando Munkonge. A distinguished teacher, a mentor for many, an accomplished pediatric surgeon, a passionate healthcare giver, a compassionate father in the family, a God-fearing, strong Catholic, always addressing his concern to the Almighty God at every available occasion. I used to call him Bashikulu. Where we come from, in Bembaland, your elder, you regard as Bashikulu if it is a male elder. Just like I address Mama Banakuluchilekwa Munkonge, who unfortunately cannot be here, as Mama. Professor Munkonge comes from the Bemba Royal Establishment, a son of our Chief Munkonge in Kasama district of the Northern Province. A quiet giant, but with a sense of humor. You only have to catch him when he's with his grandchildren and you realize how much humor he had. Professor Munkonge's journey starts somewhere in Chief Munkonge's village. In those days before independence, we used to have something called native authorities. No, not African, native authorities. It was more derogatory to address you as a native. And the colonialists, being shrewd as they were, they decided to put schools in all chief's areas. And there was a school at Chief Munkonge's palace, just outside the palace, called Munkonge LEA School. Well, he passed through there and then ended at Maloli, St. Francis Secondary School, which was the only senior secondary school at that time in Northern Province. It was a Catholic secondary school, and hence some of those traits that we saw in Professor Munkonge as a young man. He proceeded to another Catholic school called Canisius College in Southern Province. Canisius and Munali secondary schools were the only schools in the country offering senior secondary going up to Form 6 qualifications. This was, dear friends, before independence. So just before independence and getting into independence, we never had a university in Zambia. And our late president decided it's not good enough just to be independent, but we have to invest in education. And therefore, the University of Zambia was to be born in 1966. But I'm talking about 1964. Young Lupando obtained a scholarship to go and study medicine in East Germany. Now, at that time, this was a major undertaking, but again revealing the commitment of young Lupando. Lupando, I can call him now that, but I never dared when he was alive, was a determined man. Committed. If he says he's going to do something, believe me, he will follow through. He wanted to do medicine. Another one of our senior colleagues, late John Masange, was at Munali, told the principal there, I think he was a Mr. Litu, that he wanted to do medicine. Mr. Litu said, young man, what did you say? I want to do medicine, sir. And where do you think you are going to work? Medicine is not for black people. Medicine is for the white people. So Professor Munkonge didn't want to have any of that. He proceeded to go to Germany. In Germany, the first thing he had to do, which was an obstacle, was to study the German language. Believe me, it's one of the most difficult languages to study. And Lupando accomplished affluence in that language in a record time, 1 year, and he was able to start his medical studies. He completed his studies in 1970. Believe me, at that time, University of Zambia had come into effect. I was telling my colleagues here that we were seated in this quadrangle in March 1963. The days was somewhere in that corner there, when the university was launched by the late President Kaunda and late Julius Nyerere of Tanzania. At that time, Kaunda was told, medical school, forget. We give you other discipline. Those were the British. We will allow you to train clinical officers. Those days they were called medical assistants. And Kaunda said, no, I will go and find help elsewhere. We went to Russia and we had a medical school started. By the time Professor Munkonge was coming back in 1970, we had started our rotation, clinical rotation. Imagine seeing this first Zambian doctor. He joined the late Dr. Kasonde, and we said, yes, it can be done. Zambians as doctors? We thought it was only Nalumango and Masange. So at least we had 4 Zambian doctors to look to. But these two, Professor Munkonge and Dr. Kasonde, were with us in the then Lusaka Central Hospital. By the way, that's for another session. So we started those rotations. We had very tough professors, I can tell you. Every evening, each firm will admit in the morning. You had an admission round. You had to investigate your patients in the night. And we used to have side labs to do hemoglobins, urine, and all that. You appear in the ward rounds, shivering, because this professor, you don't know what he was going to do to you. Just there's nothing. He used to encourage us on. And then we'll present and they say, you see, I told you, you just have to be brave. But what did that did to us was to encourage us and to get confidence. We graduated in 1973, having intermingled with Professor Munkonge those formative years. Then came postgraduate study days. By the way, Professor Munkonge joined the University of Zambia Staff Development Program, I think somewhere around 1974-75. And he was sent to Edinburgh to study surgery. As luck has it, following in his footsteps, I found myself in Edinburgh in 1975 studying internal medicine. My elder brother was doing surgery. We were at some place behind the Royal College of Surgeons and called Lister Institute. The Royal College of Physicians was somewhere else. It was tough in that environment. The competition was so high. You needed a shoulder to cry on. And you will say, Fisangabaume, just be brave. We will go through. We were in Edinburgh. I pursued my medical studies. He finished his surgery and returned to Zambia in 1979, I think somewhere there. And there he started now his career as an academician. Starting the junior ranks of lecturer 1, rising to senior lecturer, associate professor, and full professor. Of course, at some point he became head of department of surgery. Then something happened. They saw that potential in him of encouraging building young people. So he was appointed assistant dean postgraduate training. And I think most of the senior colleagues who are here, this is the time they saw his encouragement, and it was timely. Obviously, he moved on to become the longest dean in the School of Medicine, University of Zambia. And needless to say, Professor Sekelamai, Sekelamai was another student of ours from Zimbabwe. He developed those programs which have produced so many of the health professionals. And we value that contribution at that critical point in time. Now, obviously, there are so many stories we can talk about those days in UTH. But suffice to say that the ultimate aim of Professor Munkonge was to build potential health research workers across the board so that we can provide quality health care to our people in this country. After retirement, and we also retired wherever we were, we thought it was not the end of the road. We still had a problem of inadequate human resources for health. And I'll let my colleague Lambert speak about this at a later stage. Suffice to say, it was the birth of the Lusaka Apex Medical University. And we are proud to say that that university to date has produced more than 4,000 health workers, amongst them a number of doctors. This was Munkonge for you. Professor Munkonge, a passionate educator, an accomplished pediatric surgeon, a compassionate family member. The Munkonge family was attracted to Lupando Munkonge's family. You go to that family at any one time, you see how many people in that house. Because there was something that was attracting them. He had that heart, the heart for the people, the heart for the family. Not only his nucleus family, now the medical fraternity. He was more comfortable being with students than being elsewhere. And so, dear colleagues, dear friends, we say farewell to this great son of the soil. We say farewell to a gift from God. Bashikulu chilekwa. Tuamfishapo, mwende omutende, till we meet again. Rest in eternal peace, and thank you.
Don't take my papers. Huh? My papers you've taken. I think this one is yours. Yes. Is that the one? Thank you. I'll now call upon thank you very much. Just to acknowledge that since this is an official funeral, the chaplains of the Defense Forces are all here. They have joined us. I'm sure they'll be taking over tomorrow. Also wish to recognize the former Minister of Health, Dr. Chituo, who has joined us, and the Presidential Advisor, Professor Chilengi. I'll now call upon Professor Elwin Chomba to share some thoughts for today. Thank you. Professor Chomba.
Thank you very much, Mr. Director of Ceremonies, Professor Banda, the former Minister of Health, Honorable Chitalu Chilufya, the Munkonge family who have joined us here, the president of the ZMA, Dr. Crispin Moyo, the permanent secretary from the Ministry of Health, Professor Kasonka. I will simply say all protocols observed, as my brother has recognized all of you here. I have been given an honor to give a few insights on Professor Lupando Munkonge as a teacher. I must share something with you. Yesterday, late in the evening, a young colleague of mine called and said, I didn't realize you were a student of Professor Munkonge. And when was that? Then I said, well, we are always learning. I'm sure you are looking at me as a student, joining in the classroom and listening to Professor Munkonge. I am not a surgeon, therefore I would not join him in theater, except if there is a delivery or a baby who needs pediatric help. So I said to myself, let me go back to the roots, which my friends, which meant a lot to me when I reflect Professor Munkonge as a teacher. As we heard in 1966, the University of Zambia was opened. Right from the day that university was opened, and as soon as the first president said, we shall train doctors, plans were underway. And I remember there was a plan, as plans are always written, that this university should be able to produce 100 doctors per year within 5 years. We all looked at that number and we said that was a lot of doctors, 100 per year. But then the population was around 2.53 million people in Zambia. So that's where we started from. 20 years on, over 20 years, we looked and said, how many doctors are we producing? And I remember working within School of Medicine, and each year we hardly produced more than 50 doctors. There was one year when we produced 70 doctors, and there was jubilation. So how do I come to meet and talk about Professor Lupando Munkonge? You have heard that he was the longest dean in the School of Medicine. So I met him when he was chairing the board of study meetings. I would advise most of our colleagues here that this was a very challenging moment for somebody who was the chair and therefore the conductor of that meeting. So one day, I followed him. You heard that Professor Munkonge was always very jovial, making jokes. I noticed, like a good pediatrician does, that this day he looked particularly pensive, so I said I'll follow him to his office, which was just next door. So I said, but Prof, lelo nishani chashupa. Then he said to me, na momona baba iche. And some of them are sitting behind me. When the result comes, repeat, redirect, supplementary. When are we going to train enough doctors in this country? So I said to him, you have a tough job. If you lean one side, they'll say you are lowering standards. So this is a very tough journey you are embarking on. And he was worried. And I went home thinking, surely this man thinks about these students. He identifies with the students. And I'm sure he felt the pain when so many students were dropped and they couldn't go to clinical years. Is that correct, Professor Kafumokache? They dropped. And any of you who was there on those days, we were told from the main campus, why is it that you get the best students? And yet, when they arrive at the School of Medicine, so many drop out. And I think that for someone like Professor Munkonge, he must have reflected. For you know, a teacher is not judged just by how many students you produce, but you are also judged by their competences. If you fail so many students, the failure too have to be accountable. The teacher as well as the student. And I think that's what Professor Munkonge, because he said, when I go to the Senate, they will grill me to find out why so many students didn't succeed. But they also pat me if the results were good. Because in those days, you had external examiners who also gave their reports. And were they reporting on students? Only no, they reported on those teachers and more also on Professor Munkonge during his tenure. So I said to myself, he was a teacher who always reflected that the success of his students meant his success. So that's how he continued to lead the school. And I remember when the MEd program came, I don't know if those who did MEd have made account. During Professor Munkonge's tenure, there were more people joining surgery than they were joining other schools. And I'm sure the students must have identified this is the man who is going to make us succeed. Therefore, we need to follow in his footsteps. I don't know how many of them are good surgeons, but I'm sure there are good surgeons. I don't want to give examples here because I'm sure their work speaks for themselves. The next encounter with the professor was during the establishment of Lusaka Apex Medical University. The first person who told me about this university was the late Cecilia Shinondo, who I had met long years before when I was at Chipembi. And she said to me, Namwishiva, but Prof, baleta mpe skulu. I said, what school? A creche or what? And this, because, you know, when we started, to start a medical school was almost impossible. She said, no, this will be a medical school to train health workers. I just looked the other way and I ignored her completely. And then she said, oh, you don't know. But Prof, if he decides to do something, he will ensure that he does it. I still wasn't moved. Later, the Prof called me because he was looking for a place for an office. So I asked him, what is the office for? He said, you know, I want where we can put the secretaries because we are establishing a university. And I remember what I said, Prof, where are you going to get the lecturers to teach at this university? So he said to me, you will see. And I followed then. And before long, my colleague, Professor Njelesani, came and said to me, you know, we have been very, very blessed as the first people who qualified within Zambia. Why don't you give some of your time to this new university? Prof wants to increase the numbers of health workers. And therefore, in your time, you can give at least 2 hours per month or something to support this university. And I didn't know whether he was talking about part-time or he was talking about volunteering. So I never reacted. But Professor Njelesani is somebody I take very, very seriously if he says, because as he stood here, he's one of those, coming from, together with Professor Munkonge, he has a very big heart, very, very passionate also to improve the teaching in this country of mainly doctors. So, I never reacted, and I am just reflecting as I was told to talk about Professor Munkonge as a teacher. Because now I have some evidence behind through Honorable Minister, the former Honorable Minister of Health. And then he said to me, why don't we accelerate the training of health workers? And he was very passionate that we needed to do something. He used to have all specialties on his fingertips. I never said anything at that time. But if Professor Munkonge had heard my response and my feelings, he would say, oh, but you never learned anything from our being together. Because I still asked the same question as I asked when Apex was opened. Where are we going to get the lecturers at this university? Now I'm talking about Levi Mwanawasa. When I moved there, Professor Munkonge wrote a letter of encouragement. And he said, we need all of us who are in this to compare notes, because we are training the future health workers of this country. And he put this down. And I felt, well, I have not even gone to Apex to give 1 hour of lecture time. And here is somebody welcoming me and encouraging me. We need to move together as one. So, upon reflection, the good teacher put his students first. Because when students are in the class or in theater, they are not just listening to instructions, but they are observing your passion. And they want to feel safe that they are being taught. They also want to see determination. And I didn't know when I actually was summarizing this, that my colleague, Professor Njedesani, had a shoulder to cry on when he was in Edinburgh. No wonder you did very well, Professor Njedesani. You didn't take a lot of time. It is important to instill that determination in those you are teaching. And Professor Lupando Munkonge was just not innovative. He did what he said. If he planned something, we heard, and we have seen the evidence. His determination made him achieve. So I, looking at him as a teacher, yes, we continue to learn. And I learned and reflected a lot. I may not have put what he did into practice, but still he offers learning. And I'm sure if he had met me and said, oh, what is your problems at LMMU? I would have said shortage of lecturers. And I'm sure he would have given me a D+ or an F as my mark. So as we say bye to our professor, we all need to reflect what he has left. And they say, we come from the roots, and those roots then grow into a tree. And the tree grows flowers. And there are so many flowers here. But we need to water that tree and emulate all that which Professor Lupando Munkonge stood for. So farewell to you, Professor. We trust that all those you have left behind will walk with you and remember what you have done, and you water that tree so that it will be there 500s from now. Already we have seen the many, many schools which have flourished because somebody broke the ice. So farewell, brother. You have left a good team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Chomba. The one who has the vehicle ALR 7223, some people are removing tires from the car. Please go and check your vehicle. ALR 7223. We'll now proceed and here is perspective from Professor Kopano Mukelevai. Professor.
Thank you very much, Master of Ceremonies. Let me recognize members of the bereaved family. I know that Matron Munkonge is not with us this afternoon. Let me also recognize former ministers of health who are with us this afternoon, the permanent secretary, fellow mourners, shall I simply say all protocols observed? I still remember when I worked together with Professor Munkonge. I was the dean of the School of Medicine that time, and I just appointed him as the head of the Department of Surgery, and we worked very well together in the School of Medicine. He took over from Professor Ann Bailey, who some of you may remember, who was here with us for quite a long time. So it's a great privilege for me to speak at this professional service this afternoon for my elder brother, Professor Lupando Munkonge. He is one of our most distinguished doctors in Zambia. And for that reason, I would like to thank the government, just like the Zambia Medical Association have done, for giving him a fitting official funeral tomorrow. Leadership is not only politics, but leadership in health, leadership in the economy are equally important when we recognize our compatriots who have left us. Let me start when we were training as clinical officers at the UTH. That time, apart from the senior doctors and Almangos, the Masanges, and the others who had already gone, we had 3 immediate role models. One of them was Dr. Lupando Munkonge, Dr. John Chilufya, the late, who was later a consultant at Kito Central Hospital, Dr. Sam Mundia, who was a consultant physician. These were our immediate role models because we looked to them to see what they were doing and to see what we were likely to do when we qualified as medical doctors. Many times they would invite us to their homes at the weekend for some drinks. Some of my friends will remember that. Just to say that their salaries at that time was extremely low. Mr. P.S., an intern that time was taking home 107 kwacha per month. 107 kwacha per month. But despite that, they would invite us and would socialize with them. And they really motivated us to work hard to qualify as medical doctors. This afternoon, I've been asked to speak about Professor Munkonge as a researcher. Let me say that his interest in research started a long time ago. But for me, when we were tasked to go and recruit doctors from 5 countries abroad, that's when I really knew my elder brother, Lupando Munkonge. Because we had to visit several countries, including Egypt, including Poland, the then Czechoslovakia, and Russia. And our interest was to bring back doctors who were highly qualified to come and help us run the Ministry of Health, but also to come and help us train our undergraduate and postgraduate students. So a team was set up composed of Ambassador Josephat Siomungi, who was the chairman of the Public Service Commission that time, Professor Munkonge, who was the head of the Department of Surgery, and myself as Dean of the School of Medicine to go and recruit some doctors abroad. We started off in London to go and plan our trips to these various countries. And while we were in London, where we spent only 2 days, we were asked now to go and visit the various countries where we're going to interview the medical doctors that we wanted to recruit for Zambia. Something interesting happened at the airport. Because when we were at the airport, the Zambian delegation was selected for inspection by the immigration officials. Some of you may remember those were the days of the mandrax drug abuse, which was taking place across the African continent. And in fact, that morning, 2 African countries had been sent back because some of their members were carrying mandrax for distribution to other countries. So Ambassador Siomungi was exempted because he was the ambassador, but everybody else was asked to come in and get examined and get inspected. I still remember Professor Munkonge was the first one to volunteer to go for the examination. So I looked at him and he looked at me and we said, "I hope you are all right." He said, I hope you are also all right." But when he came out, he was smiling. So we knew that all was well. And then he said to me, "Kopano, this is now your turn. I hope you're not going to let us down." So we all went through this examination at London Airport. And fortunately, all the Zambians were cleared that we were not carrying any illicit drugs. And then after that, we proceeded on to Egypt, where we interviewed the first doctors. The first day went very well in Egypt. The people we're interviewing clearly were above average. Many of them must have been professors in many of their universities. And Lupando said to me, "I'm smelling a rat here. Why would all these doctors want to come to Zambia and leave their country, Egypt? Maybe they've come for interview on behalf of the young doctors who want to come and work in Zambia." So we came up with a solution to that. We said we'll get each one will get 3 photographs, which they'll sign at the back, so that when they come to Zambia, we can identify them by their faces and also by their signatures. And Professor Munkonge was very impressed with the first day of interviews because some of the pediatric surgeons that we interviewed that day were really of very high class, and none of them came to Zambia. But they sent in their young doctors who were able to screen to make sure that there was no fraud that was involved. This was the beginning of the research that Professor Munkonge was interested in. He was very impressed with the research that was being done in Egypt, particularly neurosurgical research. We proceeded on to go to Czechoslovakia, and then we went over to Poland, where we recruited 2 identical twins who were physicians. These twins came and worked with Professor David Levitt. Some of you may remember David Levitt, one of our famous physicians who worked at the UTH. So Professor Munkonge asked one of the twins and said, are you going to come to Zambia with your husband? And this doctor said, well, it's up to him. If he wants to come, he can come. If he doesn't want to come, I've got my twin sister with me who is going to give me company in Zambia. So they stayed on for 3 years in Zambia, and then the husbands came over, joined them in the last year of their stay in Zambia. 3 years after we were sent to go and recruit doctors from Europe, we now found ourselves in Japan. Japan was a very major contributor to the health services of Zambia. You remember D Block was set up by the Japanese government, and Professor Suruga, who was the first Japanese doctor to be honored by the Zambian government, by President KK that time. So when we were in Japan, we formed the Zambia Medical Association. Zambia Medical Association. And the aim of this association was to promote and publish research which is being done in Zambia and in Japan to promote healthcare delivery in our countries. We were in Japan with the late Professor Chintu, Professor Munkonge, Professor Njelesani, and myself, and we had a very good meeting, which was followed by another meeting in Zambia the following year. This was again the period when Professor Munkonge became very interested in research. That time, he was treating children with hydrocephalus, or children with a head full of fluids because of untreated meningitis or partially treated meningitis. And because we were not getting enough shunts from Japan and from elsewhere, Professor Munkonge decided to design a shunt that he called the UNZA shunt. This UNZA shunt was inserted in a number of children to help them combat the fluid that was accumulating in their heads. Because if there's too much fluid accumulating in the head, the brain does not grow, and the children will suffer from cerebral palsy. So this was the beginning of his interest in local research, and later on, he went on to develop some other research activities in local medicines for treatment of common illnesses. So we really need to praise him for this, because at that time, many people looked down on any research that involved local conditions in Zambia, and yet he was courageous enough to start this program of shunts in children with hydrocephalus. So we really want to thank him for what he has done in the area of research, and we hope, Mr. Pierce, that we shall be able to encourage this. If you go to a country like India or China, the development of their local medicines is very, very strong indeed, and there's no reason why we cannot also research on our local medicines here in Zambia to ensure that we can be able to treat everybody who requires our attention. So for this reason, I really want to thank Professor Munkonge for what he did. And I hope that the doctors that he trained, and he trained quite a number of pediatric surgeons, will continue the work that he started so that we can be able to honor him through the work that he did and that he started. So thank you very much for listening, and thank you to Professor Munkonge and the family. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mkelewai. A story is told about a final year student in surgery being given an X-ray to interpret. There was an external examiner, Professor Munkonge, and the final year student could not make head or tail what was on the X-ray. And Professor Munkonge says in Bemba, Mwaiche taulemona tif panali boredu. That was osteomyelitis case. And then the final student says, oh yes, I can see this is osteomyelitis. And professor tells the external examiner, see, I told you he knows. I would like for us to proceed with the program. I'll now call upon Professor Muller to give us his perspective. Professor Muller.
Thank you very much, Professor Kelani. Yesterday I received a call from Professor Njelesani that would like you to say a few words about Professor Munkonge regarding surgery. And I got a bit worried, and that was in the evening, followed by a call by the ZMA chairperson to say that Prof. Njelesani and them have suggested that you speak. Now, after having had to speak after the three very senior, more senior than myself, professors, then obviously I just should try and make my speech a bit short. So to the family of Professor Munkonge, the PS, chairman of ZMA, former ministers of health, and just to make it short, all colleagues, professors in the medical profession, and all mourners, I am humbled to have been given this opportunity to say a few words on the surgical and academic life of Professor Lupando Munkonge. I propose a toast to this remarkable man, a master, Professor Lupando Munkonge. There are 101 beautiful things that could be said of him covering his 85 years. Some of them we don't know. His family knows. Some of his friends, the Njelesanis and others know about it. But we just know the part that we were when we had interacted with him. His attributes include his family, grandchildren, children, friends. But aside of that, he was involved in the training of medical students since his return from 1979 to doctors and students. And I'm sure some of them are all here. With regard to surgery, his chosen profession, pediatric surgery, which he has taught and managed with passion. The interaction I had with him was learning how to put his Unza shunt. I was one of the first ones on the MMed program, so I didn't meet him obviously in his undergraduate years, but on the postgraduate, we did a rotation in pediatrics. So apart from orthopedics, I can also put in a shunt. He was articulate in his surgical practice. We all know his involvement with Professor Lambert and team in the care of the Siamese twins. It made headlines. He was awarded by 2 different heads of state for his contribution to various aspects of surgery. He wanted to pass his skills to others, and his legacy, led by Dr. Bruce Vulani, I don't know if he's here, but and his team of 10 or so doctors. Dr. Vulani is his legacy, and I'm sure he can stand to say that he will carry on with what Prof. Munkonge, stood for. He was the Dean of the School of Medicine from 96 to 2006, a period of 10 years. And I had the opportunity to be his assistant dean. For those 9 of those years, I was assistant dean, and I would have so many nice stories to tell about his legacy, something which I cannot at this forum. At our Board of Examiners meetings, if students failed by 45 to somewhere 46, 48%, then they would not fail, because he would not allow, and he would put the lecturers and give them a hard time to convince him that this student had to fail. He would not want them to fail. He was so strict on that. He would blame the lecturers for not having taught them well, etc. I worked with him in the Department of Surgery when he was appointed head of department, and he sort of like made him his chola boy, and I would sort of like do some of his work, and we worked together very well. He groomed me to succeed him when he left. He was a giant. His kindness to all those around him, and particularly the students whom he trained and whose affairs he managed, are witness to this. His special concern was also for the training of cadres in other fields, such as physiotherapy. He fought for programs, physiotherapy, environmental health, psychiatry, infectious diseases, urology. All these were introduced and has benefited many in the country. He was involved in the training of medical students since his return until the time he left practice. And third, his contribution to patient care and medical and medicine with the establishment of Hilltop Hospitals and the Lusaka Apex Medical University. And I'm sure the others will do justice when they talk about it. So I will end by giving 2 quotes. One quote is, one is in pediatrics. And if someone can create great work only with constant struggle, we would not call him masterful. In mastery, there is a sense of effortlessness and joyousness, and it stems from one's ability and willingness to understand and work with the forces around him. Prof. Munkonge could do that. One Henry Wadsworth Longfellow said that the heights a great man reached were not obtained by sudden flight, but by those while the companions slept were working upward in the night. Another poet was honoring the great Japanese poet Ikeda, and he said he's a clinical teacher and surgeon of the far beyond. With Socratic wisdom and Pindaric excellence, he hurls at us firmaments of thoughts that blaze countless horizons. His enthusiasm gives to humanity the nectar which infuses the health and energy of a moral life. His work is the universe itself, creative energy, freshness of style, and lyrical force. Characterize his masterpieces with boundless sympathy and kindness. He deals with human problems. As a sage sitting on the shores of time watches the film of ages from primordial times, Professor Munkonge sees the caravan of galaxies and firmaments moving into an unknown beyond, and stars governing the march of times. His sharp mind questions the sorry scheme of things, questions the rigmarole of dismantled creations, questions the vagaries of mysteries, questions the writs of destiny. We have been told that eternal life can only begin after death. His departure from the earth will leave a void and will not be easy to fill. But fortunately, the memory of his smiling, friendly face will console us. With that, I say rest in peace, Professor Lupando Munkonge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Mula. We are getting close. I would now like to call upon Professor Taxon Lambert, who will speak from the entrepreneur perspective. Professor Lambert.
Of Health, the former ministers present, Dr. Chituo and Chirufya, and the CEO for Lusaka Apex Medical University, Professor Peter Mwawa, and Professor Shiraluke Ngoma is our council university chair lady. May I ride on the protocol that our acting vice chancellor presented? It was a long one. Thank you. I'm going to talk about the mindset of Professor Munkonge as I knew him. And the first impression that was created to me was when I was in Harare. Professor Munkonge was one of those who recommended at least one consultant surgeon should go and train in neurosurgery, because Professor Lawrence Levy, who was a regional consultant going to many countries, had indicated that he was getting tired and each country should send a candidate. And I was one of those chosen to go to Harare. So he knew I was there 89, 90, 91. I was about to finish my stay, and Professor Levy had organized that from Harare I go to Bristol in UK. And Professor Munkonge came and said, I've heard of the plan Professor Levy wants to do, but let me tell you, don't go anywhere else. You just finish and come back. We are losing a lot of patients in the neuro section. So come back. Just come and see what I'm doing. Then in between the weekend I came. He says, I want to meet you. I want to take you to my house. So we went to Hilltop. Then he is introducing me from one house, from one room to another. And they were all self-contained. Then at the end I said, Professor, I know you are son of the chief, but you mean your visitors, every visitor needs a toilet? He says, you can't see. This is a hospital. Then I said, Professor, will the party and its government allow you to do private hospital? Because at that time it was very tough. Then he tells me, haven't you seen the Patrick Chiumya has opened a private hospital? Now him is a non-medical person, and they have allowed him. Why can't they allow me? When you finish, you come back, you'll find me already running this hospital. That's what his mindset was, to develop the country, even through private sector. Then I came back on the 8th of October, 91. 16th October, I was already started to set up a neurosurgical unit. Then he told me, now you must attract young Zambians to start specializing in neurosurgery. That is your task. Please work hard, interest them. Then, bad luck, 1993, the Minister of Health then comes to my house and says, I want you to assist Dr. Godfrey Katema to run UTH, because he has demonstrated himself in Ronald Rose is one of the best hospitals run in the country. So do you agree? I said, Honorable, only if you will allow me, and him should allow me to do clinical work, because I can't leave my patients alone. If he won't allow me, then he takes someone else. Then he said, I'll talk to him. So 10th January 1993, I was put into administration, assisting my boss, who was very tough. Then he told me, you know, administration is very difficult. So you must stop. I said, Professor, Dr. Katema, if I stop, then patients will suffer. Me, I was sent to look after patients. Then he says, okay, what you'll be doing, during the daytime, do your clinics, do your surgeries, and all that. 1930, every day, we meet here, now to do administration, up to midnight, throughout the week. And unfortunately, we are staying in the same direction. He's in Ron Road, I'm in Sebo Road. So he comes 23:30, knocks the door. Are you there? Yes, sir. You are not sleeping? No. Are you doing administration? Yes. Then we can go. Midnight. The same year he told me, now you have a task. Go around UTH from G block to A block. Go in all storerooms. Check what people have stored. I said, yes, sir. We did that, and we found a lot of material in those storerooms. The linen, the sugar, lumbar puncture sets, they were packed. But one of the discovery we found was the heart-lung machine. It was packed. So we valued all the materials minus heart-lung machine. It costed 16 million kwacha. That was in stores. We reported and they said, okay, you have done well, continue. Then in 1994, we said, let's try to use the heart-lung machine. Let's do our open heart surgery. And we had a patient. Then we prepared. Then we found out that, okay, we had a heart-lung machine, but we didn't have a gas analyzer. So I went to Professor Munkonge. Sir, we have everything. You know, you have made me chair to prepare for the operation. We have everything except gas analyzer. Where can we find it? I said, I've heard Minor Soko has it at the military hospital. He says, give it to me. I'll talk to them. They have to give us that machine during the operation day. And he worked hard until you got the machine. We did our operation April 1994, and it was successful. But we were worried that ZESCO, if they switch off, ZESCO, the heart-lung machine will jam. So, what do? We looked for a man called Mr. Thompson from Mbala. He was a top generator specialist. We brought him, he volunteered. But he went to the basement for 8 hours. We forgot about him. When we finished the operation, that's when he appeared. Oh my God, we even didn't send him any cup of tea. 1997, the biggest challenge in the country appeared. This is what we call occipital craniopagus Siamese twins. These are children connected at the occiput. They are facing a different direction, and their bodies are also in a different direction. Can they grow up and walk? It's impossible. So this was an impossible situation. We had to plan to separate. Then, where can we do it? You know, God can guide people. Through Professor Sam Kokong, we are connected to Professor Ben Carson, African-American. We invited him. I met him at Pamozi and he went to see the Siamese twins. He says we can separate these in South Africa. But because of my history, I will do it totally free. I will not charge anything on this operation because I belong to Africa. When can we do it? Professor Munkonge says, let's read about it. How does it succeed? Remember, superior sagittal sinus, even in a normal person, if you touch the posterior two-thirds, the patient will die. But here are connected at the confluence of superior sagittal sinus. It's a touch and go. Then there's another sinus which forms called the circumferential sinus. Then we went to South Africa. Professor Munkonge says, let's go to big libraries and read. We camped there and reading in preparation. Then I told the professor, we have read 2 weeks. What is your impression? He says, no, both of them will die. I said, Prof, we should be praying. They shouldn't die. Because the Zambians are praying for us to succeed. Oh, we shall try. We shall try. After Ben Carson came, we had gone to South Africa. The very day of operation, you know, God can arrange things. Then I'm going in. Mrs. Banda with the children are coming. Professor is coming at the back, face to face with Ben Carson. My hair was moving. So say, Dr. Lambert, have you brought the babies? I said, yes, sir. But the whole country is praying that we should succeed. He says, if that's the case, we shall succeed. A day before operation, in the meeting, now we are discussing. If it becomes difficult, whom do we let go of the two? Ben Carson says, no, let's not think like that. Let's give them equal chances. Then we started operation 06:30, and by 01, we had a 15 minutes break. Then Ben Carson says, we are 4 of us. I was one of the people operating. I think these children are tired now. We have done the scalp, the scar. Now we have disconnected them bone-wise. But let's make them rest for 2 weeks. We shall come back and finish the operation. I put up my hand. He says, Dr. Lambert, these are your babies. What did you say? I said, Ben Carson, if we do that, they will be pulling each other, they will leak the CSF, and they will get infected, and they will die. Anyway, I'm not alone. I have my senior man here. I looked behind us. Professor Munkonge, have you heard what is to be done? He says, no, I agree with you. In our environment, there will be infection, and the babies will die. Then we had Dr. Shakankare was there. Then our nurse from D Block just broke down, and she was crying very loudly. So I said, Prof, what did you do? No, don't worry, I will take care of her. I said, Prof, what about the mother? Said, I've already taken care of her. She's sleeping. I told her, she's from Chipata, I told her, why didn't you finish separating the babies? Now you're going to have them all dead. So she's mentally prepared. Oh, okay. Then we came back. 3 months later, One child has a large balloon under the scalp with CSF. The other one, the wound has opened. So I ran back to Professor. Professor, have you seen what has happened? Then he says, so what do you think we should do? I said, Prof, I think we should put an extra shunt. What we should call subgallio peritoneal shunt. He says, have you read anything like that in any book? I said, no, it's not written, but we have to save the life. Then the other one, we says, don't worry, that one, we shall put tension suture. Because what we used to cover was bovine pericardium. Bovine pericardium. The heart cover of a cow. So if you injure it, it will leak, it will not heal. You lose the child. So we went back and did the procedures. When I took them back, I told them what we did. They were very surprised. In Zambia, you did this. I said, yes, we managed. And the children were recovering well. Then he came, the minister is here. He appointed me managing director of UTH. Honorable Chituo is here. 2002 to 2007. He says, you know, I've looked around. You worked very well with Dr. Katema, so go back to administration. I went. Him was the dean. So I started talking to Professor. Professor, you know, when you look at ENT, there's one doctor, and the queues are long, and this doctor is expatriate. When you go to maxillofacial, there's one doctor. When he goes on leave, our people do suffer. So, Professor, anesthesia, the only Zambian anesthetist, has gone to Botswana. So what do we do, Prof? Me, I'm thinking that we should start a private medical university. Then he says, do you know that it's very expensive? I said, no, Prof, we can try. We can try. Then he says, think about it. That was 2005. 2006, Professor, what do you think? He says, you know, I'm still thinking about it. Then in 31st March 2007, I was retired at UTH. I reported to him, now have you seen? I've been retired. Let's start the university now. He says, no, Kalulushi Catholic University is coming up. And I will take you there. You should become a member of the committee so that they don't leave out the medical school. If a Catholic university has a medical school, there's no need. I said, introduce me. I went and joined the committee. And that's where I met Mr. Msowe, the planner. He was already there. So I joined them. 2008, Kalulushi Catholic University announced minus medical school. I said, Professor, have you seen where you sent me? Have you seen? They have left out the medical school. He says, in that case, let's start. How do we do it? Professor, I said, you are the most experienced and reputable administrator or the dean of School of Medicine. You should invite people. Where do we invite them? He says, if we invite to Hilltop, many people won't come. Let's call for Long Acres meeting. We invited about 70 plus people came. We introduced the topic. Professor talked. He taught up to last 2 weeks. When he's not coming, he will ring Mrs. Lungu, tell Professor Lambert to teach on my behalf. Let him teach. Don't let down the students. They must learn. Earlier on, he had told me, people are saying Apex is not heard. Young universities are being heard on the radio and the TV. We were quiet. I'm giving you an assignment. Go to the radio stations and the TVs. Make Apex be known. I'm giving you PRO and Oga Chinondo. At the end, he was very happy because the radio Yasani and the TV, including ZNBC, carried our messages weekly. Then we introduce a grand round, which we call grand educational clinical grand round, clinical educational grand round, every Thursday. And all professors and senior teachers must participate. He was very happy with that. So this is the man whom I think, to me, without him, we could not have reached where we are with Apex. Then he was weak. Then he said, what? I said, Professor, you have a saying in Bemba. You say, Mayo mpape, na ine, nkakupapa. So, Professor, you have that good saying in your language. Don't worry about the cost. Whatever you want, Apex must papa you now. This is the time Apex should papa you. Then we brought in a firebrand, the CEO. He comes in, Professor Peter Mwawa. He says, you people, you are sitting on gold. What are you doing? I've heard you have land in Rufunsa, 4,500 acres. You are sitting on it. Why can't you start developing? You have land in Silveres, in Chongwe, in Kalundu, in Muchinga, in Kasama. How did we get this land? It was land meant for research, medicinal research. And Professor Munkonge says, you want research. You have trees in Rufunsa. Then I told him, we shall be transplanting trees from Kasama to Rufunsa. He says, you don't know that if you get a tree from Kasama to Rufunsa, it will lose medicinal value. I said, so what we should do is to get land in every province. And I can assure you, Apex has got land. And research on traditional medicines has started very well. Rufunsa alone, we have collected 15 medicinal value trees. 2 out of those, 2 have been confirmed. One is antibacterial, the other one is antiviral. So we have medicines in these trees. And it says continue. Then pharmaceutical. We said when we are training pharmacists, we should also include manufacturing. So we combined research in the provinces, bring those medicines, work on them, and start producing medicines. We know medicines are there. All we need is to purify and get active reagents out of them. So he has given us, left us work, infrastructure development. He says, you must work hard. And then, thank God, he was already weak, but we have put a foundation stone where ultra-modern Lusaka campus will be built in Chalala. So he kept on, where he put a stone, when are you starting? And you are the chairman of infrastructure. What are you doing? Tell me. So finally I told him, no, we have selected a contractor. The name of the contractor is EcoSense. Our CEO has worked very hard. Things will start very soon. He says, then I'm happy. I want you to build. So we shall build in Chalala. Chongwe is our headquarters. Rufunsa is the research center, and it's going to grow. Then we'll move to provinces. That's the plan that our dear brother has left us with. The big tree has fallen, but the shade is still there. Why I'm saying so? He has trained us well. Our most senior person now is Professor Njeresani, and I think he will drive. He will drive. We'll be in the driving seat. We shall all support him. Out of 8, 3 have gone. 5 are remaining. My prayer is that the fewer we become, the closer we should be. If you are disorderly, can the CEO bring order? Because there can be some cantankerous people. But, but the CEO is very powerful. He can tell us in our face, you are talking nonsense. You have no neurons in the head. Is he capable of saying that? So, but then when I saw the messages, I saw the HE has sent condolences. I was so impressed. The following day, I was told the government has taken over the funeral. I was even more impressed. May God bless this country for this understanding. We must build on one Zambia, one nation. Professor Munkonge, I couldn't sleep. Even last night, I can't sleep. But the Professor Mawa rang me and said, do you know that all the good works he has done, his soul is in heaven? When he told me, I became very comfortable. Then I remembered Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. He did nothing wrong. He loved the people. He loved the people. He loved his students. He loved the workers. His policies, the open door methods. I hope Professor Njeresan will maintain open door methods. Even a cleaner should come and talk about the university. These are my few words. Thank you very much. Maybe there were too many.
Prof. Njelesani, can you just check your papers? I'm missing the procedure, no, the proceeding. The proceedings for the, no, this is the program. There must be another one with proceedings on how we proceed on the. Thank you very much. Some of you might have noticed that the people who were speaking, I was fidgeting and looking at my watch, but there was nothing I could do. These are my seniors. But now I'm going to pull rank when the students speak, because I'm cognizant of the time. So I'll only allow 3 minutes for the tribute from the undergraduate student, Taonga Ngoma, and the tribute from postgraduate student, Unza, Dr. Patricia Shinondo, so that we can get to the core of the business. And in your case, I may even stand up if you are overrunning the time. For those, I couldn't do anything. Taonga Ngoma. And as we are listening to these last two tributes, can we get ready for the retirement of the twos? ZMM. Thank you.
Dear fellow mourners, family and friends of the late Professor Munkonge, allow me to ride on the protocol that has been stated earlier. My name is Taonga Ngoma, the student president of Lusaka Apex Medical University. It is heartwarming that we have gathered here, and I know we are joined by many people all over the country and the world to honor the memory of a wonderful man. Although we are coming from different walks of life, we've all been united by the late Professor Munkonge because of his selfless service to humanity through his practice of medicine. Growing up, I was intrigued by medicine that I spent a great deal researching on it. In most articles I came across, one name never missed, and that is the name of Professor Lupando Munkonge. I remember one article referred to him as the father of surgery in Zambia, and he surely is. While God's providence had Professor Munkonge as a pioneer in various medical fronts in the country, he responded with diligence. As one of Zambia's first doctors, he is also among the best, with his famous record being part of the team that successfully separated the Banda twins. And and he being the longest serving dean in the School of Medicine at the University of Zambia, and later on becoming the vice chancellor of Lusaka Apex Medical University. Records clearly show that Professor Munkonge's service was excellent. For a long time, I was inspired by Professor Munkonge, merely from a distance. But as president of our university, I have had the memorable privilege to work with and be mentored by him. Whoever said never meet your role models because they would disappoint you was certainly wrong, because many of us who knew Professor Munkonge will attest that his ethics, professionalism, and dedication to service were marvelous. Professor Munkonge was passionate about enhancing the medical field in Zambia, that he spent most of his life ensuring two things. One, that Zambian doctors receive excellent training, and two, that patients in the country are provided with quality health services. This passion of his culminated in Professor Munkonge opening the first privately owned hospital in Zambia, as well as being the co-founder of Zambia's first private medical university, which is Lusaka Apex Medical University. Surely, we have lost a great man, but we are consoled that Professor Munkonge selflessly transferred his excellent skills to many medical professionals, and he also set up systems which I plead with all of us to continue building upon to his memory. Let us push the envelope so that all the sacrifices he made for our generation shall continue to bear good fruit. He paved the way so that many follow our dreams of being of service to the people of this great nation, and we shall do so wholeheartedly with gratitude to him. May his soul rest in eternal peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Patricia Shinondo.
Afternoon. If the Director of Ceremony may allow me, please may I call upon Dr. Vulani and the pediatric surgeons present to come and stand here with me.
Thank you, Dr. Shinondo, and observing all protocols that have I was saying thank you very much, Dr. Shinondo, for according me this opportunity, and I should just say all protocols observed. I'll be as short as possible before Dr. Shinondo has one or two words to say. In view of time. I would just like to say that Prof. Lupando Munkonge is truly one of the fathers of surgery in Zambia, and particularly he is the father of pediatric surgery in Zambia. He was the first Zambian pediatric surgeon, and under him were trained Natalie Kaunda, who is I think in the Eastern Cape at present, and myself, Dr. Bruce Vulani, and you can see his proteges who are here. So he is one man who will be greatly missed by us, particularly in pediatric surgery. He was a father figure, and has been ably mentioned by others. He's one who interacted with people even at his own home. Those of us who were in the department were invited to his home from time to time for various functions that took place at his home. So he was a father to us in the ward in the operating theatre, but also in all spheres of life. He is someone we shall indeed want to emulate even in our lives. I will not say too much, and I'll allow my colleague to say one or two more words.
If I have seen further than others, it's by standing upon the shoulders of giants. That's a quote by Isaac Newton. My name is Patricia Shinondo. I'm a pediatric surgeon, like so many of my colleagues standing here. A message from us to him. Professor, we remember with fondness, as the first postgraduate class of pediatric surgery registrars, we were anxious about our journey, but excited about the new program you introduced. You found a way to calm our nerves and turn our anxieties into hope and courage. You told us not to be scared of surgeons from other countries because we had what it takes to be the best. And we remember you emphasized that when we took our first trip to Zimbabwe. Your dedication and determination were inspiring. You would come to teach us at 7 a.m. in the morning. You'd spend time explaining and grilling us to be who we are today. We now have 9 pediatric surgeons who have passed through your hands and are set to make an impact for years to come. We train more surgeons with the same passion and dedication you had for the children you cared for. We remember when you told us to push and do all cases, not just general pediatric surgery, but also urology and neurosurgery. We did manage to keep the urology service, but we lost the battle in neurosurgery cases. We learned from the best, and we stand on the shoulders of a real giant. May his soul rest in peace.
Thank you very much. We are now going to go into the essence of these proceedings as we start the process of retiring the twos. As we are getting ready, I have one confession to make, that I can remember all the meetings to which I have gotten too late. And this is because for many years, Professor Munkonge was never late for a meeting. And I was his assistant. How could it be that he could be in the meeting before I was there? So I started reporting to meetings 20 minutes ahead of time so that I was never late. A feature that has now become almost embedded in me, that I should never be late. And this is one of the things that I picked up from Professor Munkonge. So we will now move on to the retiring of the twos. The casket will be open. Fellow mourners, we have come to the part of the professional service where we retire twos. These are the twos our colleague used to practice his art, and by which the world recognized him as belonging to the medical fraternity. During the professional service, we symbolically place these tools in the casket as a mark of respect to our colleague in recognition of the closing of a career. The first tool we retire is a stethoscope. A stethoscope is a tool doctors use to diagnose various conditions. But to us, it also symbolizes the fact that we hear a lot of personal detail from our patients and that we are committed to upholding the confidentiality. I invite Professor Peter Mwawa to retire the stethoscope. The next tool we retire is a coat. As we practice our art, the coat offers us some protection from the many germs that we are exposed to. But this is also the symbol by which a member of our profession is so often distinguished by. The white coat to us also symbolizes the purity we have sworn to uphold as we practice medicine. To retire the coat, I invite Professor Odimba. The last tool we retire is a book. To be a doctor is among to continuous medical education and the doctor's thirst for new knowledge in a quest to save. Thank you very much. The casket may be closed. I will invite, at the beginning of our careers, each medical doctor takes an oath by which they swear to abide by their practice and as they practice their art. As part of the professional service of our commitment to uphold the same values our colleagues did as we practice the art of medicine. At this juncture, I will invite all doctors present here to be upstanding, and I will invite Dr. Maureen Chisembele, former president of Zambia Medical Association, to lead in the recital of the Hippocratic Oath. Thank you.
Can we all raise our right hand as we recite the oath together? I solemnly pledge to dedicate my life to the service of humanity, the health and well-being of my patient will be my first consideration. I will respect the autonomy and dignity of my patient. I will maintain the utmost respect for human life. I will not permit creed, ethnic origin, gender, social standing, or any other factor to intervene between my duty and my patient. I will respect the secrets that are confided in me, even after the patient has died. I will practice my profession with conscience and dignity in accordance with good medical practice. I will foster the honor and noble traditions of the medical profession. I will give to my teachers, colleagues, and students the respect and gratitude that is their due. I will share my medical knowledge for the benefit of the patient and advancement of health care. I will attend to my own health, well-being, and abilities in order to provide care of the highest standard. I will not use my medical knowledge to violate human rights and civil liberties, even under threat. While I continue to keep this oath, may it be granted to me that I enjoy the utmost in health, life, and the practice of the art, respected by all persons in all times. I make these promises solemnly, freely, and upon my honor. Thank you.
Academic fraternity present here today, previous ministers of health, ZMA leadership, and the entire membership of the Zambia Medical Association. I recognize the military staff, members of the press. I bring with me to you all, members of the medical profession, from the Honorable Minister of Health, Honorable Masevo, special greetings. The Minister of Health shares profound sympathy with the Munkonge family and indeed with the entire academic fraternity. The Ministry of Health and the entire government system is extremely saddened by the departure of Professor Lupando Munkonge. To many of us in the medical fraternity, Professor Munkonge was a lot of things. He was a teacher, he was a mentor, an inspirator, an advisor, a shepherd. He was a coach and a father figure. And to me, he was and will always be my uncle. To the co-workers, Professor Munkonge was an arbitrator and a peacemaker. To the country and the government, Professor Munkonge was the pinnacle of pediatric surgical practice. He was an astute clinician, a medical entrepreneur, an accomplished academic, and a state counsel on medical issues. He was such an asset to this country, for he influenced many people's lives in so many different ways. He dedicated almost half a century of his personal life to service of humanity in various areas of his medical practice. During his illustrious career, Professor Munkonge rose through the ranks from a resident medical officer to the position of senior consultant and of the dean of the School of Medicine and a full professor of pediatric surgery. It was during his time, like we've heard, as dean of the school, that an extension 10-year development plan was rolled out, which saw the addition of the pharmacy, physiotherapy, and the biomedical sciences to the school of the University of Zambia, School of Medicine. He pioneered the medical licentiate program, which today forms the pillar of emergency surgical service in the rural parts of our country. His work on hydrocephalus children and the use of the popular shunt cannot go without mention. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Munkonge served government on many remarkable tasks. He was a member of the surgical team, like we have heard, that performed the first ever open heart surgery in Zambia. He was a leader of the Zambia rescue team to the Gabon air disaster in 1993. He was also the leader of the surgical group for the successful separation of Siamese twins at the University Teaching Hospital and in South Africa. He received numerous national awards and accolades for outstanding contributions to the service of various associations and communities. Colleagues, this is a very huge and irreplaceable loss for the Ministry of Health and certainly for the health profession. It is for that reason that the President, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, did not hesitate to assure the nation of a befitting funeral for this guardian warrior of our profession. May the departed soul of this gallant health professional rest in peace. I thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now invite Zambia Medical Association to hand over the casket back to the Defense Force, where it will proceed for state funeral tomorrow. As we have noted, the death of Professor Munkonge is a great loss to our profession, the people of Zambia, and the whole nation at large. As we bid our farewell to our colleague, the last part of our professional service is a march past when the casket has been opened, after which ZMA will hand over the casket to Zambia Defense Forces. So can we proceed to the march past? Thank you for opening of the casket to march past. I will request that after the march past, you return to your seat so that we can hand over the casket and close with the national anthem and proceed from there. I'll invite the people here to lead. You can go around that side and come back and take seat. And after that, we shall go row by row. Row, please. Please follow in the rows as soon as the row is finished so that we save on our time. Thank you. In this particular instance, the family will not be proceeding to the marching past. It will just be the medical profession and the other people who are here, not the family. Thank you. I'll talk to him. Oh yeah, just rise. Yeah, yeah. Dr. Katambo, can you please come forth? National anthem, this is not to after course, but can you I can write the verses for
Just verse and chorus. That's all.
yes, I've told him that no chorus. Okay, so you can just do and then the chorus. Meet this man again. Just receive some guidance and leave him. He's gone? Oh, okay. I'm receiving guidance from the PS that on closing we can do the last stanza and the chorus. Is that okay for you?
Last stanza?
Yes.
So we just do one verse
and
one chorus.
Yes.
Not three verses.
No.
Okay.
The last one, remember?
Okay, yes.
It won't disturb your sequence?
No.
Okay.
Me, I'm just playing. Actually, it's them, the people who might have to know that they're just singing one verse.
I'll tell them. Okay. Thank you. As we come to the close, I've been guided that we will just do the last stanza of the national anthem when closing and the chorus. we may take our seats when they close. Then ZMA has to hand over. Yeah, they won't do the national anthem with us, right? We'll do it after the. So that we are not left alone. Yeah. So yes, we'll now proceed to ZMA, handing over to the Defense Forces casket. Shall we be upstanding? We're not singing the national anthem yet. They're just going to carry the casket. Thank you very much. We've come to the close of the professional ceremony. Thank you.